Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Crashes and Taxes, my friends. I'm really excited to be with you today. I am your host for this podcast, Rebecca Walser. And today I want to talk to you about a really misunderstood retirement vehicle that we are going to really zoom in on and take a deep dive in these 15 plus minutes to really understand what are our work and company retirement opportunities. Because I have found that this is the biggest misunderstanding of a lot of people. And I just thought, you know what, let's just have a 15-minute, let's get everything on the table. So I want to start back to sort of the beginning of the modern era of retirement planning through a job, right? So I'm not talking about the entrepreneur. I'm not talking about just an investor. I'm talking about someone who's working and who's literally preparing for the rest of their life and how they're going to afford and maintain their lifestyle. So most people get a job and have some kind of opportunity through their work to start to save for retirement. America has a massive wealth gap. What that means, and really I'll specify specifically now beyond just wealth. I'm talking specifically now about the retirement savings gap. And so what I'm saying is we're living in America at a certain lifestyle up here. And if we were to maintain that lifestyle up here, and this is a video too, so for those of you, I'm using my hands. For those of you that are listening on audio version working out, I know a lot of people take me out of the gym with them. I don't know how I'm actually motivating in your gym, but hopefully I am, and it's motivational for you to just get to work and make some money or invest or something in positive. So that's wonderful. And I'm happy to be with you during your workout. I hope you're doing well. So what I'm trying to say is that in order for us to maintain the lifestyle that we're all living right now, we need to put a substantial amount more into earmarked retirement savings or wealth building. America has become I don't know if the Gen Zers are changing this. Maybe perhaps they are. Millennials, not so much. Maybe a little bit, but we need a lot more public notice work and real outreach to the new generations to really explain that you really have to start young, really, really young. There's this new wave that's happening with Gen Z and some millennials called FIRE, where you really basically work in a fast burst of time, like 5 to 7, maybe 10 at the outset years, build up. You pretty much live as frugally as you can for that time period. You save everything, you invest everything as much as possible, and then you're supposedly done and you can retire early. So there are some things that are leading me to think that the millennials, the Gen Y and Gen Z will start to become a little bit more serious about preparing themselves, because the retirement wealth gap is one of the largest in the world in America. We live high on the hog, and it's a climate of our culture. I mean, don't get me wrong. We are the world's reserve currency. We literally spend, more money by debt financing every year than we do with tax financing. So I can give you the numbers on another show. Let's just talk about if you have a traditional job and you're working, what are your opportunities? So this means we need to start with the very basic opportunity. And the first basic opportunity that we've had since the 1970s is the 401k. The 401k was introduced in the Revenue Act of 78. And basically at the time it was introduced, it was really designed to be in the Revenue Act an executive tax dodge. So in other words, back in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, we had a lot of, I don't know if you guys are familiar with LBOs, leveraged buyouts. We had hyperinflation. We had a lot of things that were really happening in the business world. And so what you had was, top level executives that were trying to figure out how they were going to attract top executive level quality, people to their firm. And they started to say, the golden parachute and the pension plan and all of this isn't enough. We need something else. We need another cash-based system. And so they said, all right, how about we come up with a plan where we will pay these people, if they stay with us for so much time, they have to vest them. We will bonus them, but they will stay in an account where it has to remain and be vested. And then we will basically, when they separate from service, that is when they will have access to their money. So they approached the government about this plan. The government agreed, and they basically wrote the 401k into the Revenue Act of 1978. Now, I want to very clearly point out what was important specifically in this act. This was intentional, a tax dodge. What happened was they went to the IRS and they said we want to offer them this additional bonus on top of all of their other corporate bonus structures that they're getting. We want to offer them this additional one, but IRS, we don't want phantom income. Phantom income is when you're taxed on a benefit that you haven't actually physically received yet. And this does happen. For example, there are some types of bonuses that corporations pay their highly compensated executives that they put into a certain investment type of fund, but an executive doesn't have access to it at that time. It's not vested, but they are taxed on it. So they will pay a phantom tax, and then the investment will sit, and then they have to become vested. The corporations did not want that. They did not want phantom income. They wanted income that was not taxable as yet because the benefit wasn't vested, and they knew people would complain against having a tax due on income that was phantom, that was not really paid out to them. So they went to the IRS, and the IRS said, yes, we will do a tax deferred subject to vesting plan where we will tax them when they get access to the funds later. And this actual act is what really started the demise of our pension system, because in the 80s, pensions were very underfunded, and Congress started cracking down on the funding of those pensions. And what the corporations decided to do instead, really in 81, the trend started where they decided to go away from defined benefit. Defined benefit means that the corporation is responsible for your benefit, and they are defining what it is, and they are responsible for delivering it. Defined contribution is the 401k. So you'll see a DB plan versus a DC plan, and that's what we're talking about. A pension is a defined benefit, a 401k, and all of the cousins related to the 401k, which are many now, are all defined contribution. Defined contribution means something very important. It basically means that we are responsible 100% for a couple of things. The first thing we're responsible for as an individual is figuring out how much we want to have in retirement to live off of to maintain our lifestyle. So we sort of have to know the number of after-tax income we want once we retire to maintain a lifestyle. We have to know that number so we can figure out what amount we need by the time we retire as an aggregate number, the total wealth picture we have to have, such that the cash flow that we want will actually be able to be realized and happen. So we have to first start with, and this is why at my practice, we always begin with the end in mind. We first start with how much yearly cash flow we want to live. Now, I like to do all of my planning to age 100 because I just can't tell somebody that, sorry, your money's going to run out at 97, and if you live to 100, we're going to be out. So I like to do all of my planning to age 100. Some people will tell me, no, I don't have any longevity in my family, let's cut it down. But still, I like to do everything to age 100 because medicine is, you don't know this crazy stuff that's coming with medicine. I've talked to you guys about all the stuff that's coming. So the point is, you are responsible with the defined contribution 401k plan and any cousin of the 401k, which is the 403b, the simple, the SEP. The IRA is sort of a cousin, and we're going to go through all of that. You have to figure out how much you want after taxes. You have to really calculate taxes accurately, which is a huge problem, as you know. And then you have to really understand what your earnings are going to be on that cash flow so that you can understand how much we have to have. So all of that has to be done. just when you're on the defined contribution, because you're the one who has to make it happen. It's all on you. You have to contribute to your financial success. It is no longer on the onus of a pension company to actually make this happen. So that's the first thing, is that we moved away from defined benefit. We went to defined contribution, which is the 401k. Now, the 401k, as you know, because I'm a tax lawyer, I've talked to you guys many times about this is not a tool for the 21st century. It is not a tool for 2021 or 2020 or 2019 or 2018 for that matter and beyond. Because what we are seeing now, and you'll have to go back and listen to another podcast episode of why taxes are coming and why we're about to face the biggest tax precipice in the history of America. Without exaggeration, I cannot stress the point enough. It's coming. We're in it. We're in it between now and the next 7 years, 2028, when 65 million boomers will practically retire. So we used to believe in 1981, and just to put you in the frame of reference for 1981, basically back then our top tax rates were in the 50s, okay, the 50% range. So in 1981, when the 401k, which was meant as an executive tax dodge, for highly educated, sophisticated people, executives at big corporations, when that got rolled out to every person in America as corporations moved away from pensions and went to defined contribution 401ks, people at the time were upset that tax rates were so high. Everything was so high. And so when their companies said, hey, you can shave off part of your taxable income every year and defer it into your retirement fund, and think about it, right now you're working and you're making a lot of money and you're being taxed at the highest rate at almost 50%, or actually it was 50%. And yet when you retire, you won't be making this much money. You'll be making this much money. So you'll go down in brackets and you'll pay less taxes when you retire. That is really the conventional wisdom that was born by moving from the pension to the 401k in the early 80s for America. And it made a lot of sense at the time because tax rates were really high. But just literally 5 years later, that 81 the 81 where the 401k really went gangbusters across America started to go gangbusters. That was the first year of Reagan's first administration. By the time he got to his second administration in 86, he went ahead and passed a tax reform bill that went into effect in 87, where he cut our top tax rate to 28%. So what you have is in 1981, all these employees getting onto this program of not paying the taxes as high as they were in their earning years, but deferring that wealth and going to pay the tax in retirement when they make less, and therefore they'll pay less. So all of that made sense to people. They got on board, they started doing it. And then just 5 years later, Reagan comes along and he cuts the top tax rate on active earnings from 50% to 28%. And that 28% top rate was the lowest rate we had since 1930 under FDR. You have to go all the way back to the 30s to get to a 25% top rate. So this was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. It was the lowest rate we had in 50 plus years by 1987. And yet, do you think America stopped deferring? Do you think that anybody said, wow, the top rate now is at 28%. By the time I retire, who knows where the rates are going to be? I'm going to pay my tax now and no longer defer. We didn't. We were addicted completely to not paying tax on our full earnings every year. And so people saw this as a way to control tax and truly believed that even though taxes were now at the top rate, only 28%, that somehow they would magically be in a lower bracket when they retired. And honestly, that tax arbitrage, don't pay while you're working and making a lot, wait till you retire and you're making less and therefore you'll pay less. That tax arbitrage, in order for that to work throughout time, tax rates have to stay the same. Because if you have an environment of rising rates, you could be making less in retirement, even much lower cash flow than when you were working, but you could be paying more on those dollars because the absolute rates of tax policy go up. And this is obviously the problem that we're facing now, the precipice that we're facing, is that we have for the first time ever the full retirement of our firstborn generation in America that was alive when Social Security was implemented in 1935. So our baby boomers are our first full-born generation that have fully paid into Social Security for their entire lifetime, and they are retiring together as a generation. This is our first Social Security generation retiring en masse. Has not happened yet, and this is why we have a lot of issues coming because of the demographic shift of America. So let's go back now and see the time frame of really what I would call captured money, which is money that you are putting into your wealth fund, into your wealth, design that is through your employer. So now we have the 401k that came out in, again, 1978, rolled out really in the 80s. And then if you look at really what has been since 1978 and the 401k, what has been really the genesis or the the pulling forward since then? What has America done? Have we had these tremendously great things? No, we've had very few developments. So the first thing we talk about is the Roth IRA. The Roth IRA, named after Senator Roth, whose idea it was to model an investment after the great tax benefits of overfunded cash value life insurance, which I've discussed on this podcast many times. The Roth IRA was introduced in 1998. So just let that sink in. The 401k came out in 78. And it wasn't until 20 years later that the government actually wrote into law for us an actual investment that you could pay the tax up front and then be tax-free forever. So the Roth IRA came out in 1998. But notice, I didn't say that the Roth 401k came out in 1998. No, we did not get the Roth 401k until Section 402A, and that was all the way in 2006. So the Roth 401k became available in 2006. Even though it came out in 2006, they didn't really go to it. In the last 3 years, I've seen an explosion of the Roth 401k being offered. And interestingly enough, what I've noticed is corporations add it to their options, but they don't even advertise that they've added it, because I have so many clients that come to me and they're like, I say, do you have the Roth 401k? And they say option, and they say, oh, I don't know. So and then I've had many people come back to me and say, actually, Rebecca, they did add it. I just never knew that they added it. So the first thing I would say is if you can check with your employer immediately to find out if the Roth 401k is an opportunity for you. The second thing I would say is if the Roth 401k is not an opportunity for you, we always want to get the matched money. So whenever a company, if I work and I put in $1, if a company matches that dollar that I put into my 401k up to, they match another $1. So I'm getting 100% return for free. I would have to have a 100% tax rate in order for me not to make that dollar investment, because I'm getting 100% return immediately from my employer. So with the 401k, even if you don't have the Roth, I still recommend, my default go-to is that we contribute to the match to get all of the free money. Now, there are some really terrible matches that are out there. They'll match you 5% on the first 50% on the first 5% of your salary that you contribute. That's not such a great match. So you have to do the math, and that requires individual analysis. But I would say that in general, at least if you only have the 401k, contribute to the match, get that 100% return, and we won't have 100% taxation, so that will be worth it. Beyond the match, I'm not a fan, because I really don't want us investing pre-tax anymore in 2021, because I firmly believe, rooted in all mathematical analysis and facts, that the government is going to have a much bigger tax grab in the future once all the baby boomers have retired, and the tax rates are going to be headed upwards. Now, I'm not alone in my perspective. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, did an analysis in 2008 that in as much even gave us projected tax rates, stating that the middle class will be somewhere in the 60s. This is going to be, unless we have some supernatural intervention from God, this is going to be the reconciliation of the taxes that we have not been paying. So if you look at Reagan, And what he did, he took the top tax rate down to 28%, but he widened the bracket so that pretty much almost every American making over $28,000, and you got to remember this was in 1987, was actually in the top rate. So he really widened the bracket. He pushed a lot of people down into the top rate, but he cut the top rate by almost half to 28%, which I'd say to this day, we'd love a top rate of 28%. Our top rate right now under Trump's tax plan still is 37%. So this whole point, I've given you all this foundation to really give you my point now and my frustration now. And that is with the captive nature of wealth building at your employer. The 401k provisions are governed under ERISA, Employee Retirement Income Security Act, ERISA. ERISA governs all qualified money. So that is your 401, your IRA, your simple, your SEP. ERISA governs all of that. That is why we call it qualified money. Now, ERISA and the government, best of intentions, bad outcome. Best of intentions was they didn't want people to be using their retirement account like a bank account. They really truly wanted to put some legal teeth behind making it for retirement. Otherwise, people, and Americans especially, because we spend so much, we wouldn't save anything. We wouldn't have anything to show for it. So they put on this 10% penalty if you cash out money prior to being age 59 and a half. And obviously, once you're beyond 59 and a half, you can take distributions. But there's something that has happened with corporations that exists beyond just this 10% penalty. Because what happens is corporations enter into contracts with third-party 401k administrators to administer their 401k plan. And they basically end up creating something that becomes captive. In other words, if you're working and you do not have the ability to roll your money out at 59 and a half, you have a captive plan where you must physically separate from service in order to get access to your money. The reason this is a problem for me is I'm always looking at what does a person have already pre-tax and what are we going to do to fix it? What are the steps we're going to take to fix the fact that we have the IRS and the federal government inside of our wealth account? We don't want that. We want to buy the IRS out for the cheapest cents on the dollar legally. So we need to get them out. That is where we start from a tax perspective. How can we, in the most efficient way, get the government out of our future wealth? Because as the government's need becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, they will give us less and less and less net to us. And if we really want to be in a position of control of our wealth, that is not a position where we can have a silent partner who has Trump and majority rights. So what I was saying is that is not having a silent partner who can trump our rights. The federal government gets to decide what the tax code is. There's nothing we can do about it. So they are in control if they're inside of our wealth account. So what I start to do with clients is I say, okay, how much is on the 401k platform? And they let me know. And then I say, wow, do you have a Roth 401k option? They don't know. They check. And then when they find out they have the option for the Roth, right? So they have a 401k traditional balance and they have a Roth 401k balance. And do you know that these custodians do not allow people to do on-platform conversions, converting their traditional 401k to Roth? Now, this is not a hard rule from the IRS. This is a custodian issue. This is a how you're managing your 401k plan issue. This is a plan issue. This is not a ERISA issue. And so this is directly at the feet of administrators and companies because you've basically trapped this person now. And let me explain what I mean. They have, let's just take $500,000 just for the sake of argument. They have $500,000 in a 401k. They are 54 years old. They want to work until they're 60. So now we have 54-year-old. We've got 6 years of lead time before they separate from service. And they have the Roth 401k, but they can only start contributing new contributions to the Roth 401k. Now, this is what I mean by they are trapped. They are captured. They have no ability at 54 to roll that money out to an IRA where we can Roth convert it. Yet they prevent that employee from converting it on the platform. And that is not right. That should be totally illegal. So frustrating. We have to be able to, as citizens of this country, look to the future, see what is coming, and make really strategic and fundamental decisions about how to deal with the structure of the wealth that we've built. And this does not allow that. Fortunately, I'm a lawyer, so I have been able to successfully, in many states with many clients, force companies to allow them to get their money out. And that is a legal process that we go through, and we've been very successful. There are certain parameters, not everybody can do it. But this is what I'm saying. If we know that tax law is coming and changing, we're on the precipice of it, and we've got all of these trillions of dollars in pre-tax wealth that is captured and captive, that cannot be dealt with, because even if you have the 401k on Roth option on your platform, they don't allow you to do a conversion on platform. And what I mean is converting your traditional 401k pre-tax balance to an after-tax Roth. Now, let me explain to you why you really are captive. You can, at any time you want, this 54-year-old could take a full distribution of the 401k and take a 10% penalty. That's true. But that's not what we want. We don't want after-tax dollars that are going to be subject to gains and taxes and gains. We want Roth dollars that are going to be tax-free forever. So we really need the ability to do a Roth conversion, not just take a distribution. You can always take the distribution and pay the 10% tax. Nobody's arguing that. But then it becomes after-tax dollars, and it can never then be Roth. So that is why I feel like this is a trap. It's not fair. Americans should be up in arms about it, because it literally prevents Americans from doing what they have a right to do, which is to tax strategize their wealth. And this is a huge problem. So thank God, I know of a way to get around it for many, many people. Not everybody qualifies. But the fact is, how many advisors out there know about this and that they can do it? Or they're just saying, oh, you have a 401k that you can't touch for 6 years. All right, move on. And they just figure out the future value of that. And that's how much we're going to have to deal with on the tax side 6 years from now. Imagine someone having $1 million and being in their 40s and having to let that money compound until they separate from service at 60. This can be a very, very, very big problem. Whether it's $100,000 or $2 million or $10 million, whatever it is, we do not want to retire where it's all pre-tax as the government's tax need is growing. So I hope that this explained to you, what it is that makes somebody captive, what it is that makes somebody not have as much control over their wealth as we would like, and what there is to be done about it, because there are things that can be done. I hope this was really informing and informative for you today, and I look forward to you joining on our next episode of Crashes and Taxes. Take care, everybody. Give us a star and refer your friends. Keep giving us the 5-star reviews, and definitely let your friends know. I appreciate it.